Hi folks, and welcome to April 9th, 2021. This is Cord Cutting Weekly, the show where we wrap up the past week in cord cutting and streaming news. And this week we've got a significant new streaming deal from Netflix and Sony to discuss, still more rumors of a next-gen Apple TV, T-Mobile's entry into home internet service, and more. But first, yes, I'll keep it short. If you haven't done so already, please do consider clicking the like and subscribe buttons down below. Either one would be appreciated, but clicking on both would be wonderful. Thanks in advance. And now, let's get on to the news, starting with a new deal from Netflix and Sony. This week, Netflix and Sony Pictures announced a deal that includes streaming theatrical releases exclusively on the streaming service starting next year. According to the deal, those films will end up on Netflix after they've left movie theaters and been released on physical media like DVD and Blu-ray. The deal includes future releases like Morbius, Uncharted, and more, and it also means Netflix can bring Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse onto its platform. Netflix also has first rights to Sony's direct-to-streaming titles as part of the deal. Overall, this looks like a pretty sizable and significant agreement for both parties, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out when it goes into effect in 2022. In other Netflix news this week gave us more evidence the streaming video industry is getting more crowded and more competitive. A report from Ampere says longtime streaming juggernaut Netflix lost a sizable chunk of its market share during 2020. Some new figures indicate Netflix's market share now hovers around 20%, which is down from its previous of 29%. That marks a 31% drop in market share as new competition has entered the field, including Peacock and HBO Max last year, and more recent options like Discovery Plus and Paramount Plus here in 2021. To be clear though, Netflix is still in solid shape. That 20% places the streaming service above its competition, including Prime Video, Hulu, HBO Max, and Disney+. The company also surpassed 200 million total subscribers by the end of 2020, which includes 36 million additional subs who joined in just the last year. One way to look at it is that Netflix remains a dominant force, but the competition in the streaming world is definitely ramping up, which could help explain major streaming deals like the Netflix and Sony one we just discussed. And of course, it'll be interesting to see how the major players in this field fare during 2021. Any predictions out there? Let us know what you think will happen by the end of the year in the comment section down below. And speaking of significant growth over the past year or so, one video platform that's grown by an impressive margin lately is YouTube. Pew Research Center came out with some new survey numbers this week that suggest YouTube's usage among U.S. adults jumped to 81% this year compared to 73% back in 2019. The group also surveyed some 220 18 to 29-year-olds and found 95% of them were using YouTube. Other social media platforms like Reddit and Instagram also saw jumps compared to 2019, and all of those increases were most likely influenced by the pandemic and the overall turn to online video for more and more of our entertainment and media consumption. And YouTube is certainly trying to keep things fresh and interesting, including the recent launch of YouTube Shorts, the company's take on the short-form TikTok-style video trend. But what about everyone out there? Have you found yourself turning to YouTube more often in the past year? You know where to let us know. In hardware rumor news, no, we are not giving up on the next-gen Apple TV rumor mill just yet. In fact, this week we learned of another hint of what's possible thanks to the latest beta code of Apple's tvOS software. 9to5Mac reported discovering mentions of 120 Hz in the latest beta, which might suggest 120 frames per second refresh rate support could be coming to that long-rumored new hardware. The current-gen Apple TV 4K's HDMI 2.0a port currently supports 60 Hz or 60 frames per second at 4K, but doubling that to 120 Hz would require more bandwidth, and that's something the new HDMI 2.1 standard could provide. We'll have a link to our recent video on HDMI 2.1 in the video description down below, but seeing mention of 120 Hz support in tvOS could again point to more advanced specs on an updated Apple TV device. Whether that 120 Hz would be used for high frame rate 4K or 8K video or maybe gaming remains to be seen, of course, but we're definitely keeping a close eye on Apple to see if or perhaps when the company decides to officially announce a new model. Until then, the waiting game continues. In internet news, T-Mobile announced this week that it has officially launched its 5G home internet service. The company says this new option can offer average speeds of 100 megabits per second with no data caps and no equipment rentals. It's also touting no contracts for the $60 per month service. According to the company, 30 million homes are now eligible for their home internet service, including 10 million in rural America. T-Mobile mentioned its plans for home internet service back in 2019, touting a $50 a month plan and no data caps. That pilot program expanded this year before launching for millions of eligible homes this month. And if you end up giving T-Mobile's 5G home internet a shot, let us know how your experience goes in the comment section down below. And you can check to see if your home is eligible with a lookup tool, and we'll have a link to that in our post link down below in the video description. Speaking of T-Mobile, this post is part reminder and I guess part deal alert. In any case, since T-Mobile announced it's shutting down its live TV streaming service TVision later this month, the company also announced offers with third-party services. So T-Mobile's deal with YouTube TV could net you live TV streaming for $54.99 per month, which is a $10 discount compared to the service's standard asking price. If you do go with that option, please note that T-Mobile says the price will jump back to normal after 12 months, and you'll need to take action to ensure that $10 discount stays in effect beyond those first 12 months. Meanwhile, the company is also offering a $10 discount on Philo, which represents a 50% discount on their regular rate. And again, there's some fine print to consider for both of these deals, so if you want to make the most out of those discounts, check out the link down below in the video description. In movie news, it looks like the monster mashup Godzilla vs. Kong raked in some impressive box office numbers during its debut. The event film took in more than $285 million worldwide, making it the fastest film to reach the $200 million mark globally during the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, movie theaters around the world have seen massive long-term closures over the past year plus, so industry watchers have been keeping a close eye on how films have been performing now that we're starting to see more and more locations reopen around the world. Domestically, the film brought in around $32 million during its debut. And yes, the movie was also available on HBO Max from day one, thanks to that landmark Warner Brothers deal, and the studio said it enjoyed a, quote, larger viewing audience than any other film or show on HBO Max since launch. And if any of you out there have checked the film out, feel free to let us know what you thought of the Titanic matchup, and maybe where you chose to watch it in the comment section down below. In other HBO news, it's been a full decade since Game of Thrones first landed on our TV screens, and the company is eager to celebrate. HBO is dubbing the month of April the Iron Anniversary and has a month of events planned to celebrate the landmark show. And that includes a full marathon over on HBO 2 starting at 10 a.m. Eastern on April 10th, and a dedicated spotlight page over on HBO Max. The marathon will also help raise money for global charities like Women for Women International, World Central Kitchen, UNICEF, and more. Meanwhile, fans can check out some behind-the-scenes footage, interviews, and maybe some Easter eggs over on HBO Max if you're interested. So if you'd like to return to the world of Game of Thrones, this is your month, and we have more details if you're curious in the video description down below. Meanwhile, Amazon's Prime Video continues its push to land big-ticket movie premieres. This week, we learned that the streaming service has acquired the rights to Paramount's sci-fi flick Tomorrow War, starring Chris Pratt. The time-traveling film is set to debut on Prime Video on July 2nd, and it marks the latest major film to land on Amazon's streaming service, following sequels like Borat's subsequent movie film and another Paramount film, Coming to America. That last sequel even helped Prime Video make an impact on Nielsen's weekly streaming chart. Thanks to the follow-up starring Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall, Prime Video secured the top spot for the week of March 7th. So will this latest big acquisition drive Prime Video to similar success when it launches later this year? Well, time will tell. But it's clear Amazon has been aggressive about securing some big-name films for its streaming service. And so there you go. Those were some of the top cord-cutting and streaming headlines for the past week. And as always, thank you all so much for tuning in. And again, if you haven't done so by now, please do consider taking a moment to click on those like and subscribe buttons down below. That would help us out tremendously. On Wednesdays, Jess hosts our live Q&A session, and then on Thursdays, we dive into specific topics, like this week's look at parental controls on some of the biggest streaming services out there, including Netflix, Prime Video, Hulu, and Disney+. And then, of course, there's Cord Cutting Weekly every Friday, where we wrap up the past week in cord cutting and streaming. For now, though, thank you all again for tuning in. My name is Philip Palermo. Hope you all have a wonderful and safe weekend. We'll see you next week. Take care.